Good morning. It's Sunday school. I'm your pastor, Lon Milo DuQuette of the First Thelemic Church of the Beast here in Sacramento, California, welcoming you on this beautiful day the Lord hath made. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late this morning. I was enraptured with an image, the image of my own reflection in the bathroom mirror, and this new haircut and beard trim that I received. I was amazed. I didn't look like the grizzled old fart. I looked great. I told Constance I looked like a golden god this morning. Well, she soon disabused me of that and reminding me who gave me this haircut and this wonderful beard trim. Obviously, I'm getting myself prettied up to go to Noticon, which is like next Thursday. I'll be traveling, so I'm packing and things like that. So if you can tear yourself away from this image here, I'm going to read you literally something that, I'm sure I've shared with you or portions of it a million times, and I can't believe that it escaped inclusion in my book, Allow Me to Introduce, which is a collection of my forwards and introductions to other people's books. And this is one of the most important forwards of all of them, and it is the forward to the classic of classic magical texts, the Book of Abramelin. Now, it's a new translation. Now, the original, it's a new translation of an old translation, so which I'll explain here in just a minute. But this came out a number of years ago, and I was honored to contribute a little bit at the forward. But it was compiled by my friend George Den. Okay, the scholarship in this particular work is awesome, but it was translated by Stephen Guth. Okay, translated from German into English, not German into French into English. Okay, anyway, I'll explain it in a minute. It's a gorgeous book, and it's published by, let me make sure I get it right here, Ibis Press, which is an imprint of Nicholas Hayes, which has always been sort of tangentially connected or in good company with Wiser books. But anyway, here you go. It is Angel, Demon, Sunday School offering. I start off with a quote from book 3 here of this present book. The unredeemed spirits and their followers, their works and all their doings, be their unrelenting enemy, and try throughout your life to command them and never serve them. Abraham of Worms to his son Lamech. As a young student of the Western mysteries, I was thoroughly enchanted by the stories of the celebrated magicians of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The dramatis personae of this modern myth could not have been more colorful. The dashing young Irish poet William Butler Yeats, the beautiful actress Florence Farr, the fabulously wealthy tea heiress Annie Horniman, the brilliant Magus MacGregor Mathers, and let's not forget the devilishly naughty Aleister Crowley. Now, I've been thinking a lot about these characters, and an omission here on my part, Moynia Mathers, MacGregor Mathers' wife, and in my opinion, the left hemisphere of his, or the right hemisphere of his brain. Brilliant artist. They were a power couple. I've been thinking a lot about him lately. I'm digressing here, I'm sorry. Been thinking a lot about him lately because, once again, I'm working on, with two close friends, working on a screenplay about Aleister Crowley during this period. It's a fantasy, so don't get your hopes up that the definitive historical document is in the works. But I've been thinking a lot about these characters and Crowley's interplay with them. And if you're at all familiar with the shenanigans going on, you'll realize why it's a great subject for a film. But anyway, I digress. As a backdrop to this tale, what more romantic milieu could we ask than the Holmes and Watkins-esque world of late Victorian London, here in the fog-shrouded capital of the empire upon which the sun never set, at a moment in time when the Industrial Revolution and Darwin and Marx were eroding the tired soil of 2,000 years of human history and hurling the world forward into uncertainty. These modern Merlins were occupying their free evenings, plunging backwards into the distant mythology or the mythological past on a quest for illumination and magical power. I wished I talked like that in normal life. Okay. An important cast member of this drama, however, was not a person, but a book, an ancient book of magic penned in German between 1387 and 1427 by a German Jew known as Abraham of Worms. Originally titled Book of Abramelin, a 1750 French translation of the text, rested, I might add, a fragmented version of in French, rested virtually undisturbed in the Bibliothèque d'Arsenal in Paris until 1893, when it was translated into English, the French, by Samuel L. MacGregor Mathers, who subsequently published his translation in England as the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, as delivered by Abraham the Jew unto his son Lamech, a grimoire of the 15th century. Now, many of you, especially the older of us watching this, your introduction to the Book of Abramelin was this text, or a copy of this text, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, and it was pirated and by De Lawrence and others in beautiful editions, and it's usually everyone's first introduction to the Book of Abramelin and the Abramelin operation, myself included. This book would have a profound impact on the world of Western occultism and elevate the oft-denigrated art of spiritual evocation to a status equal to the sacred spiritual sciences of the East. The feature that sets the sacred magic apart from contemporary grimoires, some of which obliged would-be magicians to embark on scavenger hunts for bat blood and body parts of exotic amphibia, is the doctrine that states, please allow me to paraphrase, that in order to wield godlike magical powers, the magician must actually be possessed of godlike virtues of character. This is not to argue that it's impossible for reprobate magicians, and don't we all know a few? This is not... Oh, I'm not talking to you. Or am I? Okay. This is not to argue that it's impossible for reprobate magicians, by memorizing and following certain recipes of formulaic magic, to temporarily bamboozle the unredeemed spirits to obedience. But it is a tenuous ability at best. First of all, unenlightened magi, or magi, are not possessed of sufficient clarity of vision to determine whether or not their desires and actions are in harmony with their own best interests. Now, we don't have to project any moral or artificial or externally applied moral dictates or proscriptions. We don't have to threaten anybody with any doctrinal heaven or hell or anything else. If you're a reprobate magician, you're not possessed yet with a sufficient clarity of vision to determine whether or not your desires and actions are in harmony with your best interests. It's as simple as that. I digress. Second, the spirits who apparently have eternal season tickets to every performance of Faust and Don Giovanni inevitably ferret out chunks in the moral armor of the magician and amplify and exploit these weaknesses in order to extricate themselves from the magician's control. On the other hand, the magician who has gained a sufficient level of spiritual illumination and self-realization is qualified, by virtue of who he or she is, to safely summon and wisely command the spirits and put their potentially dangerous powers to use toward more noble ends. While portions of Abramelin's book, or of Abraham's book, are concerned with classic formulae, recipes, magic squares, he makes it clear that these devices are tools only to be used after the magician has undergone a profound and personal spiritual transfiguration. The centerpiece of the book deals with this transcendent experience, outlining in exact detail a step-by-step procedure whereby the magician, after months of purification, fasting, and intense prayer, attains communion with a transcendent spiritual being referred to as the Holy Guardian Angel. The exact nature of the Holy Guardian Angel defies proper definition. The book makes it clear, however, it is a divine entity uniquely linked to each individual. In essence, the magician's personal spiritual soulmate. Another way of looking at this relationship would be for us to consider the magician as being a spiritually incomplete human unit until united with the holy guardian angel, and to consider the holy guardian angel as being a spiritually incomplete angelic unit until it has become one with the magician. The concept of a personal guardian, spirit, or angel who must be acknowledged or placated before one begins to operate is nothing new in the traditions of Western magic. The concept of the holy guardian angel, as presented in the Abramelin operation, however, goes far beyond an obligatory toast to the good angels or a quick prayer for God's blessing before conjuring demons. The lengthy and increasingly intense preparation ceremony is a serious and arduous regimen that ruthlessly pushes the magician month by month toward a single-pointed passion for the angel. The operation is crowned by a supreme invocation and ecstatic consummation of the divine union. Students of Eastern mysticism will at once recognize this part of the ceremony as being very similar to that of the Bhakti yogi, who achieves ecstatic union with his or her deity by means of focused love and devotion. The Abramelin operation, however, does not stop there. In order for the magician's consciousness to be a worthy etalon of the divine, it must thoroughly reflect not only the highest heavens, but the lowest hells. For 3 days after the supreme invocation, the magician remains locked in a blissful intimacy with the angel, as his consciousness melds with that of the angel, and his metamorphosis becomes complete. Then, and only then, guided by the omniscient wisdom of the angel, the magician systematically conjures to visible appearance every unredeemed spirit of the infernal regions, each and every one. One by one, in order of their rank in the hierarchy of hell, the magician compels the unredeemed spirits to confess their subservience and swear complete and unconditional obedience. Only after this has occurred is the magician ready to safely use the magic squares at the end of the book. This systematic, almost scientific approach of the Abramelin method appealed instantly to the late 19th century esotericists. A few volumes of the first edition of the Mathers translation were immediately snatched up by members of the Golden Dawn and other interested parties, many of whom were naturally more interested in the theoretical aspects of the work rather than actually performing the ritual. Still, its reputation as a bona fide magic book, rather than merely a book about magic, soon spread, and with it the dark notion that because the book revealed the secrets of how to conquer the world's evil spirits, then the evil spirits would do anything to keep this knowledge from the world. Rumors spread that the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage was a sorcerer's handbook, that it was dangerous to even have a copy in one's home. Sadly, from almost the moment of its publication, the bright glories of this marvelous and unique document were eclipsed by the most ridiculous fears and superstitions. Ain't it always the case? I confess, in 1976, When I first ran across the copy in a used bookstore in Hollywood, I think I still even have the bookmark. It was Gilbert's on Hollywood Boulevard. Okay, I digress. When I first ran across the copy at Gilbert's, my hand actually shook as I pulled it from its place on the dusty shelf. Fearing demonic attack, I very cautiously drove home and tucked it away in a black borrowed slipcase and kept it apart from my other books. Not wishing to take responsibility for the unspeakable evils that might befall them, I refused to loan it or even show it to curious friends. Today I feel pretty silly about the whole thing, especially considering the fact that the book that caused me to quake in my boots and lose friends, the book that established Mather's reputation and caused a supernatural uproar over 100 years ago, was itself incomplete and dissimilar to the original text, as to be almost worthless as an accurate rendering of the content and intent of the original documents. This is not to say that Mather's sacred magic is not a valuable contribution to the library of Western magical literature, or to suggest that he did a poor job of translating the 1750 French manuscript into proper English. On the contrary, experts tell us Mathers did a wonderful job. The problem rests with the woefully incomplete and, quote, doubtful French text from which he worked. Even though I was at the time completely unaware of this fact, I was delighted when a few years ago I discovered Mr. Den had completed and edited a new German edition of Book of Abramelin from material gleaned from the earliest surviving manuscripts of the text. I found out about this from my now lifelong friend Mike Conlon at Wiser Books. A dear friend, a dear brother, and I'm happy to say we're still conspiring together. But I digress. Naturally, I lamented the fact that I could not read a word of German, but was soon cheered by the news from Mike that there would soon be an English translation. I contacted the publisher. Oh, this is Mike. Okay. I contacted the publisher to offer my assistance and was sent the partially edited manuscript. Now, the second I heard about it, I called Mike and said, "Oh, Mike, please send me the please, let me be part of this. This is so exciting." The moment I set it side by side with Mather's translation, I realized that nearly everything I thought I knew about the magic of Abramelin was going to change. The first and most obvious difference between the two texts is the style of the writing itself. I was delighted how easily and naturally Mr. Guth's translation flowed compared to the formality of Mather's King James style English. I more or less expected. What I didn't expect was how the text itself differed in content. First of all, the original book was comprised of 4 books, instead of only 3 that are found in Mather's edition. Second, we find that the heroic 6-month preparation program that is outlined in Mather's is actually a much more complex ceremony lasting 18 months. These are in and of themselves exciting and significant differences, but as I read on, I discovered more numerous and profound dissimilarities. So many, in fact, that I soon abandoned any thoughts of itemizing them for this forward. For those readers who are familiar with the Mather's editions, this will become abundantly obvious the moment you open the book. I must feel, however, that I must point out something in particular that it's likely to be quite unsettling for all those who have held in particular reverence the sections of the Mather's sacred magic that concerns itself with the magic squares. The fourth book of the Book of Abramelin, Book 3 in Mather's translation, is comprised of 30 short chapters that present us with a series of magic squares containing letters arranged upon a grid of smaller squares. These magic squares for each chapter are numbered. They're also preceded by a numbered index outlining each square's particular virtue and power. Justified or not, in the minds of many practicing magicians, this section of the book is magically the most important. Once the magician has successfully gained knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, and that's a big prerequisite, everyone. But once the magician has successfully gained knowledge and conversation of the angel, he or she is instructed how to use the magic squares to effect all manner of wonders. As one might expect, this part of the book has always been alluring to dilettantes and would-be wizards who turn straight to this section and find themselves devilishly tempted to use the squares without first going to all the trouble of invoking their holy guardian angel. Many a fabled misfortune, real or imagined, suffered by Golden Dawn era magi have been blamed upon the premature use of these squares. Crowley himself treated them with particular respect and carefully hand-copied a complete set of the Mather's ones. Okay, complete set of the fragmented Mather's ones. Crowley copied them and bound them in an expensive folio. He warned students to be especially careful not to leave them laying about, cautioning that they have a tendency to escape the magician's control and do their mischief in the world. Grady McMurtry, a young U.S. Army lieutenant stationed in England during World War II and a student of Aleister Crowley, told me of the day Crowley, upon returning from the kitchen with a fresh pot of tea, caught McMurtry thumbing through his Book of Abramelin squares. Frail as Crowley was, he managed to scare the young man nearly out of his skin by shouting, "Don't touch that! You don't know what forces you could unleash." I use that a lot, just in my daily life. I say it at the coffee shop. It always gets a reaction. Okay, don't touch that! You don't know what forces you could unleash. Eyebrows are important. Such was the mystique of the squares of that Abramelin held on the magical imagination of the Golden Dawn era magicians. One can only imagine what they might have thought if they knew that virtually none of the information concerning the magic squares in the Mather's translation agrees with that found in the original German manuscripts. For instance, there are 242 squares in the Mather's edition. 160 of them, over 2/3, are only partially filled with letters. The German edition, on the other hand, itemizes material from 251 squares, and all of them completely filled in. Furthermore, there's a dramatic, almost universal disparity in how the magic words that would fill the squares are spelled, how the squares are distributed within the chapters, and how the squares are indexed and identified. It almost breaks one's heart to think of the countless hours Mathers consumed writing his commentaries on the squares as he heroically labored to justify Kabbalistically the possible meanings to misspelled words that fill incomplete squares that are out of order, incorrectly distributed, and misidentified. I realize it may be that I'm being unduly hard on poor Mathers. That's certainly not my intention. I have the highest regard for this great magical genius whose works continue to enlighten and inspire new generations of serious students of Western mysteries. We owe him an immeasurable debt. Our focus should not be on what his translation was not, rather that we should celebrate what the new Den Guth translation is. An elegant and accurate exposition of an ancient and artful technique for self-realization and self-initiation. I, for one, welcome this important and highly readable edition of the book that is once again destined to make a profound impact on the world of Western occultism. Lon Milo DuQuette. Okay. That's my Sunday school sermon for today. Once again, I'm plugging one of the most important magical textbooks of the last 300 or 400 years. Oh, and I've gone way over. I've got a lot of packing to do, and I've got to finish writing my my speech. I don't know what I'm going to say. Anyway, it doesn't matter what my speech is going to be like. Look at this haircut. Until tomorrow, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Oh, I see Constance in the background in the garden there. There she is. Oh, she's behind a tree. She must have heard me talking. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.